lot of times people are content until something happens or someone tells them it's not good enough.
Okay.
So I was happy until one of the examples I always give is like, I remember I was in the second grade and we're playing football, and I thought I was dressed fine until somebody said, your shoes don't have a name or it's not name brand.
Oh.
Thank You don't know it until someone brings it to your attention and makes you self-conscious. And I
Mm-hmm.
always go back, and a lot of times these things always happen in school, and especially high
Mm-hmm.
school, when you become conscious.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start spiraling, you start the path of trying to fit in and critique yourself, and you have confidence issues, and you try to navigate those social relationships in a way to where you can fit in. Or,
Mm-hmm.
you can go to the other extreme and just be a lone wolf.
Good evening, everyone. Um, this is Dolly Ochola with Kavaya's Daughter Speaks. I am so sorry. It's taken us 25 minutes. It's taken me 25 minutes to figure out what's happening. But this evening, I want to welcome Samara and her dad, Sandy. Samara was with us about 3 weeks ago, and she was with her mother, Onika, and they were talking about their relationship. So today we're going to hear about their relationship, the parent-child relationship, but from a father's perspective. And we're so glad to have you, Sandy, here. We are familiar with Samara. And so I'm just going to ask you, Sandy, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself? Who is Sandy? Can you tell us a little bit about your childhood and upbringing?
Oh, wow. I am country boy from Macon, Georgia. Grew up in the sticks, had chickens, chopped wood, ate rabbits and squirrels, uh, two-parent household, grandparents on both sides, raised as a Christian, hard worker.
Mhm. Okay. Okay. And how would you describe your childhood? Did you have a happy childhood? How did your childhood influence who you are today as Onika's husband, as male, and as Samara's dad?
If I if I go if I flash back, there are a lot of things that I wish I could have done. A lot of other things I wish I could have seen as a child. But as I matured, it was really stable.
Mm-hmm.
It was really stable. Sometimes when you're growing up, you want to do what you see other kids do some of the things on television, and that just wasn't our life. You know,
Okay.
hard working. My parents, they raised me up with great, strong moral values. But as far as my life growing up in the woods, I was satisfied with it until I wasn't satisfied with
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm. So what do you mean you are not satisfied with it until you're not satisfied? What was unsatisfactory?
But a lot of times people are content until something happens or someone tells them it's not good enough.
Okay.
So I was happy until one of the examples I always give is like, I remember I was in the second grade and we're playing football, and I thought I was dressed fine until somebody said, your shoes don't have a name or it's not name brand.
Oh.
Thank You don't know it until someone brings it to your attention and makes you self-conscious. And I
Mm-hmm.
always go back, and a lot of times these things always happen in school, and especially high
Mm-hmm.
school, when you become conscious.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start spiraling, you start the path of trying to fit in and critique yourself, and you have confidence issues, and you try to navigate those social relationships in a way to where you can fit in. Or,
Mm-hmm.
you can go to the other extreme and just be a lone wolf.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay. So I just want to ask you, 3 weeks ago when you were talking to Onika, she did mention that there's some things that she went through in her childhood that influenced who she was as a mom, right? So, for example, she talked about abuse, which also made her very protective. What in your childhood has influenced your fatherhood?
uh what in my childhood has influenced my fatherhood? Well,
Mm-hmm.
I had a I would say I had a good father and a grandfather. I had two strong male figures in my life. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the one thing that really stands out is my mother was kind of overprotective. Um, she kept us close. She was a housewife up until I got to like the 11th grade. So she
Mm-hmm.
my brother really, really close. Me and my brother are 3 years apart.
Okay.
Uh, so we were all she had. And I also have a younger sister who's 7 years younger than me. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the things that kids did, high school football games, basketball games, fall festival. I didn't get to do any of that stuff. It was on the bus and back home, on the bus and back home. Church on Sunday, on the bus and back home. So,
Mm.
so one of the things that I did when I got my first job, I asked them to put me on the schedule every day, so I could. That was kind of the only way I could get out the house. Took karate classes in the 10th grade, who was taught by a teacher in another county. Um, since he was a black man about the same age as my father, they trusted him and they let me go to these karate classes. Those are the only way I could get out the house. But as soon as I graduated, I kind of took flight. I joined the Navy and I had to get away. Now, I love my mother. We don't have any conflict now.
Mhm,
But they
mhm,
raised me and raised my brother that I just didn't agree with. Um,
mhm.
didn't want anybody doing too much for me. You know, I'm be just on. I don't like nobody telling me what to do. I mean, especially being around my grandfather as much as I did. My grandfather was a man's man. So, and I'm big on chivalry. So, um,
Mhm.
I I pretty much took my instruction from him, and me and my mother butted heads a lot. Because there's just certain things that she couldn't do for me, and I wasn't going to let her.
Mhm.
Um, so first chance I got, I left so that nobody had to worry about me. I went in the military. So
Okay. Well, thank you for your service. So I'm gonna go to Samara. Hi, Samara.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. So Samara, I want us to talk. I want you to tell us how you experienced your dad. Okay. Last time we talked about your mom. Today the focus is on dad. How have you experienced being brought up by Sandy Cornelius?
Um, so I think I mentioned the last time, but like when I was younger, I was a really big daddy's girl. Because he was with me the first few years when my mom was traveling. Me and my dad were together, so I think I formed a bond with my dad a little bit faster than I did with my mom. So I
Mm-hmm.
think from as young as I can remember up through middle school or maybe even like late elementary school, I was really I was a lot of a daddy's girl. Um, you would agree, yeah.
okay.
Um, so just because, like my dad said, my dad he the nicest person I've ever met. Like I'm not exaggerating, and he's just extremely chivalrous. He's just a caring person. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not difficult to like him objectively. Strangers like him, everybody likes him, but especially like as his kid, he was always doing things that made me feel special, or
Mm-hmm.
looking out there, you know, having my favorite snacks, or always knowing what I wanted to order, like things like that. That I think never made me really question that he cared about me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think just like when you have friendships or relationships with people, you know, you do things here and there to strengthen the relationship. And I can say that my dad has always been that way, either
Mm-hmm.
going on dates or we were, you know, doing things together. Like, so it wasn't, I would say that me and him had like a strong relationship,
Mm-hmm.
really, really, really early on, I would say. Yeah. He was just always really
Okay.
sweet, but
Mm-hmm.
most of the time, most of the time.
Okay. Okay. So let's talk about you growing up. Okay, so as a young child, you were mostly with dad, and then it got to a point, I think your mom started traveling less, right? Did that change your relationship with your dad, or did the dynamics shift a little bit?
Not really when she stopped traveling, because she stopped traveling when I was like 5. So
Okay.
yeah, it was still really, really early. I just think that me and my dad, just because I was so young when he left, just kind of like intrinsic, I don't know what the word for it is, or like instinct was just
Mm-hmm.
closer with him. Um, but I would say maybe it started to change and maybe we got less close, maybe like middle school, right around like every point in a kid's life where you start like learning things or trying to figure out who you are and going
Learn
through
to be a
things.
girl.
Yeah, learning to be a girl. That too, when you hit certain stages as a girl, you're gonna be close with your mom with certain things, um, that you're not necessarily going to talk to your dad about.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
I think also just growing up,
Mm-hmm.
I started to have more things that I needed insight specifically from my mother with.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
also just like we said, me and my dad don't agree all the time on
Mm-hmm.
everything. And so as I got older, there just started to be more things for us to disagree about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about disagreement, but let me go to dad. So Sandy, we're talking about Samara. Now she's an adolescent, right? She's growing up. She's coming slowly becoming a young lady, and there's a time that she felt a little disconnected, right? And she felt like she was not understood, which is what a lot of adolescents feel. A lot of teenagers feel that way. So, can you take us through that period? What was your experience? What were you thinking was happening, and what was the most shocking thing to you? Now, after Samara obviously showed signs of distress.
Yes, it makes you feel powerless. It makes you feel helpless. Um, the only thing you can really depend on is how you express it to you and how you receive it. Um, trying to navigate through wanting to be there for somebody and help them through something and not knowing how to. It's pretty triggering. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
triggering because from the time she was born, I always wanted to just protect her. I used to have these dreams. You know what I'm saying about keeping her safe from like a wild animal or something like a tiger or bear. But as she got older and she started navigating things and going through stuff, I understood that there was a spiritual side of the things that she would just have to experience in life and learn how to navigate through. And we had to help her navigate through and process her feelings and process her emotions. But we had to process ours too,
Mm-hmm.
so they understand her. And that's
Mm-hmm.
the part that a lot of parents don't get. I really had to process and understand that some of this, I have to guide her, I have to raise her, I have to put in the way she goes and show her things. The other, what we teach her for her to latch on to and use herself. And I think every parent should forgive themselves
Mm-hmm.
missing that. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. And as I shared in my own childhood, I just kept it to myself. I ran through the woods, I climbed trees, I built tree houses. You know, and me and my mother didn't talk until I was 24, 25, and I expressed all of that. So it's much as it was a trial, it was also a blessing. Learned a lot of similarities of what I went through, and I was
Mm-hmm.
come around to be sensitive. And God, thank God for my wife. She was able to break some things down to me from a female perspective to help me kind of navigate through that and be there for her.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay. So what would you say was a mistake that you made as a dad? And not because you were a malicious person, but because you did what you knew how to do, right? Because that's what happens. We kind of think, the way we are brought up is what we think is the right way to bring up a child, right?
right.
And none of us is perfect. So what is the one mistake you can say, okay, maybe not just one, a couple of things that you wish you would have done differently?
Yeah, been more sensitive, because a lot of times when my generation came up, you know what I'm saying, it was a suck it up, put an H on your chest and handle it, and you start raising kids, you think that they're you. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So you may ask something and it sounds really, really insensitive, and it is when you think about it. What's wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm saying? It's
Mm-hmm.
that. Um, so there were a few times, I looked at her many times, and especially with her scoliosis, I couldn't help her. It was just pain,
Mm-hmm.
and like I said, it makes you feel helpless. You know what I'm saying? But it was the insensitive part,
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
thinking that she's supposed to handle the same thing that I handle.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
So,
and we
sorry.
forget and we also sometimes we just forget to be there. You know what I'm saying? And be
Mm-hmm.
needs at the time. You know what I'm saying? Everything's not a lecture.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's not. Yeah, you understand what I'm saying? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that we're family. As much as I came up the way I did, my grandfather did take me under my wing, and I did get love at times. It just didn't come in the hug. I didn't have a hugging family until I came back from the military and started hugging people. You know what I'm saying? I got it another way. He said, "Come here and let me show you something." You
Mm-hmm.
know, so I had to learn. This child, because I have three. I had to learn how to talk to this particular one in that special way. So,
Mm-hmm. Okay. Samara, so you are an adolescent and now things are changing. You're beginning to feel not understood.
Mhm.
Um, and your parents, like your dad said, he did not like to be told what to do, right? Did he let you get away with stuff, or he wanted to tell you what to do?
I'm gonna say in between because I would say that my dad lets me get a little mouthy, just like a little bit, like the right amount of like mouthy with him, under the guise of like that's just how we talk to each, like we just banter to each
Mm-hmm.
other. So as long as he never like feels like it's borderline on to where like I'm disrespecting him, which there have been a couple of times where he's been like, "Hey, pull it back," and then like we'll talk about it and you know what I'm saying, deal with it in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But like, so I would never say like he wasn't like neither one of my parents were ever hard body like you
Mm-hmm.
know, we still had moments where we were just a family at times and stuff like that. I just think that maybe as time went on
Mm-hmm.
there was I would say there were always love, but like I've said many times, I didn't always feel really close to or want to talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there were a couple times where maybe we argued, or like I said, we started to disagree on things. Specifically, a main one was my clothing for a really long time. I think like I started to get into like crop tops and stuff in middle school, and that was a big no, and things like that. So like there were little things that like were always always a debate. Yeah, or like ever since I was young, I would always play in makeup. I would get in trouble for playing in my sister's makeup. I would play in my mom's makeup and get in trouble. So like right around middle school, like I think I wanted to start wearing like mascara and stuff like that. He didn't let me. And like I wanted to like I mean, I would wear like lip glosses and stuff, but nothing crazy. But like I wanted to start getting into wearing like different colors. He wouldn't let me do that either. So there were a few like arguments, or like I won't say they were arguments because back because back then we didn't really know how to argue. So there was a point to where, like, I feel like now we actually let ourselves argue, which is better to me. Or yeah, we let ourselves disagree. Like, we will debate, but I think what we know now is, number one, they'll let me talk and respond, which I can appreciate. But also, we know when it's like, okay, like, we're not getting it through to each other, let's leave it be. So I think that back then, though, we didn't know how to argue, so it would either like really, really drag on, and then both parties would wind up upset, or it would just get like shut down really early, and like I was told, like, you know, my answer is whatever, and then that was it. So that's kind of like how it would go.
Did he let you wear a crop top or two?
No. No. There was, I think, there was even like a day where he had me like throw them away. I had to throw them because I couldn't buy them. Like, back in, I'm not buying anything. Like, I was a kid, so like I wasn't like going out and buying clothes yet. My peers wasn't. So anything I bought, I was with, you know, my mom, or I was with him. So I got them to buy me crop tops. So I started like to cut them. Like, I started off like cutting like t-shirts, and then I would wear them in the house, because like you can't get mad at me for wearing a crop top in the house. I'm not going anywhere. So I house, but then like I started like trying to wear them out here and there, and some days I would get away with it, some days I wouldn't. And then like there was one day where like he really wasn't feeling it, and I had to throw them away. But
Okay. So that is a common issue that parents have, you know, with their kids, what to wear, what is decent for this event, and what is not decent for this event. Okay. So I'm going to go back to Dad. So Dad, we know that it got to a point where there was a lot of turmoil, let me put it that way, in Samara's life. And so now you finally find out that there's something serious happening, and now Samara is in hospital. Can you take us through that as a dad? How did that feel? What were the things that you thought of? What are the feelings that went through your head? What are some of the questions you had? And maybe there was no one to answer.
Yeah. So there was a lot of God, what is this? There was a little anger at God. I'm like, okay, my baby got scoliosis, and now she's fighting for her life. Like, what part of the game is this? Yeah, you know. And then there was that feeling of helplessness again. I mean, it took a lot of prayer, and it took a prayer circle around us to actually navigate through that. That night when this all started was a hard night. By the morning, I felt like she was gonna make it, and after that, I was hoping that she had a great quality of life after that. You know, but those are those things that I had those prophetic dreams of protecting her about. Wasn't nothing that was going to eat her up. It was the things of the world. And that's one of the reasons why, just like the question you just asked her, it's one of the reasons why we let her express herself when she talks. She knows when to pull it back, when it's getting out of hand and stuff. But I don't want her to keep stuff bottled in. I don't want her to feel like she can't talk, you know. And so from that point on, I think that's the point where we really gave her freedom to express herself. Because you got to process through your feelings. You can't just hold them in. You got to process them. You got to understand where they come from, why you're feeling like that, and the origins of it, so that you can deal with it. You know, you know, and quite honestly, the old school in me sometimes, you know, asks that insensitive question a lot of times. What's wrong with you? You know, because you don't want them to go through you. It's like, I know what's out there. I know peer pressure's out there. I know there are things that and people out there in the culture and society is gonna make you not feel good enough, pretty enough, all, you know. But I can't. I cry sometimes when I think about it. I can't protect her. I can't go with her everywhere. I
Mm-hmm.
have to wrap up and put protection on her, but she has to grow with where her roots are planted at, and whichever way they may grow,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I correlate that with my wife tells me all the time, say, you're more like your mother than you think you are. And I kind of picked it up early in our marriage. The overprotective part, I can be that. I purpose not to be. I purpose not to be. I'm not driving you everywhere. I don't want to support you as an adult. I don't I don't want the pressure of worrying about what you're doing and where you're at all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of worry. I want to be able to let you go.
Mm-hmm.
So when the turmoil and stuff, all these things work together, So I think us going through that turmoil also helped me be able to kind of give her over to God, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because at that point there was nothing I can do but pray and hope,
Mm-hmm.
and she's got a world that she's got to go out there and live in, and I
Mm-hmm.
broke it for me.
Okay. I'm just wondering, usually when your child is admitted and, things start to calm down, you have a fast session as a family, right? What is the most remarkable thing that Samara said to you that you're willing to share during that fast session that was an eye opener to you?
Wow. I tell you what,
Mm-hmm.
the in the ER, she was conscious enough, and she whispered to me when I was standing over her. She said, "Daddy, I'm sorry for that happened.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. You got cut off for a minute. Daddy, I'm sorry,
I
what?
didn't mean for this to happen."
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
And in her saying that, I knew that she wanted to live.
Mm-hmm.
She's live, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
that was the hope. I mean, we hear this all the time. Everybody don't come back. Everybody don't come back. Those said that, what I'm saying. Okay, there's her fight. You know what I'm saying, that she wants to get better. You know what I'm saying, and she don't.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
almost immediately because that was in the ER.
Mm-hmm.
you know, from
Mm-hmm.
where this happened at. So
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that it was not until you were 25 that you spoke to your mom. Were you already out of the Navy, or you were still in the Navy at that point?
Navy, I came out of the Navy. I was living in the next county, one of the other counties over, and
Mm-hmm.
I still visited. I mean, as much as me and my mother bumped heads, I never not went down there. I either went down there every day or at least every weekend. I was always down there,
Mm-hmm.
eat or whatever. And we had a talk. She began to tell me about some of my affairs, and I didn't know I was still getting mail at home. I said, well, I take care of it. And we kind of had an argument, and I said, Mom, I don't need your help. I got it. Worry about something else. Be retired. And I didn't mean to come off like that, but that's one of the reasons why I subtracted myself from the picture. You got one less child to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? The way I was raised is men go out and they take care of themselves. Nobody gonna give you nothing. That's the kind of man I was raised. You know what I'm saying? So we had that conversation, and we had a little bickering match. And she, I never, my mother very, she's what you would call a strong African American woman over here. I mean, and I never thought she was gonna cry. And when she cried, that's when we had that conversation, and that's when we came to an understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if anybody, I think I'm probably the one child she don't worry about anymore.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what we are. I'm gonna tell you something. It's amazing. You never know, because I was kind of a bad kid growing up. So they said, you don't know how you're gonna turn out. You know, like I told you, when I got back from the Navy, we never hugged and we never said I love you. But when I got back, I started doing that, and we've been doing it ever since. So it brought a little tenderness, you know what I'm saying, with
Mm-hmm.
breaking up Rodney the way that I did, you know, and sometimes things just need to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And not all bad, you know, traditions are good, you know, but sometimes you need to make a new tradition.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? To where we can all be free. I'd never seen my mother that soft before. And I think she needed that.
Mm-hmm.
So
So would you say having Samara and also getting married has made you a little softer also? I mean, going to the Navy definitely, but having Samara and getting married, has that made you a little softer?
oh yeah, I'm domesticated. I mean, I was uh but you know, my wife, she lets me do ride outs when I need them and get away when I need them. I cycle whenever I get back on my bike. She won't let me get a motorcycle though. Um, they're my responsibility. You know, I mean, I hurt somebody about my family and my girls, and I got an older daughter. I mean, I'm just being candid.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? That's with a man's family. You know, and that's one of the things that I think that fathers and daughters where they kind of bump head at. It's like if something happened to you out there, right? You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? You know, they're gonna like, where your family at, right? If my wife is out there and something happens to her, she's my responsibility. I can't have that on my hands. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I take responsibility. You know, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I go at some point in time, but until then, you know, when I go over to her husband, if something happened to her, I'm coming to see him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the way.
Yeah.
That's the way that it should go.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, it made me softer because I am. I mean, you know, I'll I'll make food for him. I go get it for him. I give him a glass of water. I do all the things. Just I'm still an agile 52-year-old man. Move pretty fast. Move pretty good. And I want them to feel exactly how a lady's supposed to be, especially my daughter. I want them to feel just exactly how a lady's supposed to be treated. You know, there are certain traditions that should never die, and chivalry is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So, you did mention about your role as a dad. So, can we talk a little bit about the stereotypes that maybe you were not them, but you fought hard to dispel? Because sometimes, for example, if they say women are mouthy, sometimes a woman will not voice their opinion because they don't want to be told they're mouthy, right?
right.
So, what are some of the myths that you, as a dad, tried to dispel?
Oh, that we're hands on, that we're
Okay.
really hands on fathers. I mean, we get involved. I mean, my son and my oldest daughter, I was hands on with them. You know, my son wasn't in the house that much longer because by the time he got married, he graduated into the military. But my oldest daughter, Samara, I can't really help her much with homework because she's so smart. But as far as I date her, I take her out on dates. We go on ride outs. I
Mhm.
take her out I took us 2 years ago. I took her out at midnight. So she can learn how to drive on the interstate. Um, when her mother was on the road, I did her hair. I gave her a
Mhm.
bath. You know, um, kept her clean, changed her clothes, did the laundry. And sometimes she came and slept in the bed with me. You know, she
Mhm.
slept on the other side of the bed. You know, you know how kids are.
Mhm.
Um, shoot, man. When I went down the road, I take her down there to see my parents. Sometimes we was kind of joined at the hip because my wife had Samara, and then what? 3 months later, she was on the road. So I had a
Mhm.
newborn. and and I think a lot of times, the stereotypes that men don't take care of their kids. I know too many. I mean, I work with a whole bunch of us that you know. we be there talking about our kids. You know, some black father is always driving their daughter to Alabama, to Grambling. You know what I'm saying? Always driving back and forth to school. You know, you had to, you know, that's all I hear. I don't have no, I don't know a whole lot of people, black men that don't take care of their kids. A barbershop full of them. Cycling groups or hands-on fathers. I didn't know there was that many black cycling groups in the U.S., but there are. You know, so I think that you take the smallest thing and the worst thing, and you make it the loudest thing to create the stereotype. And I think that's out like that. The few disgruntled, you know what I'm saying, or the louder than the harmony that is. Because I don't really know how to do that. I was talking to my wife the other day. I'm going to say this real quick. And I was telling her how some of the ladies that I dated before that had kids. And we were just talking about it, like how I was like, well, some guys on records and on TV would say that, okay, well, I'm not doing that, you know. But for me, with the way I was raised in community, you see something that needs to be done and you do it. There's no hesitation. It's just innate in you as a man. Just like if a woman was walking in the street and she saw a baby walking down the sidewalk, she's going to grab and start nurturing and say, whose baby is this? It's instinctively. Nobody has to prod you to do that. You know what I'm saying? If you see a lady, you like a lady, and she's got, hey, look, you say, hello, young man, how you doing? You shake the little man. It's an instinctive thing. And if you're spending time around any children, anywhere, and take them under your wing, it's a natural thing. So those are the type of guys that have always been around me. I don't know any that don't do that.
Okay, so you're pretty much saying that fathers are involved and they do take care of their children, and you're a good example because you started taking care of your child from the time she was 3 months old, pretty much by yourself while your wife was traveling for work. Now I'll go back to Samara. Samara, let's talk about conflict, right? Between you and dad. Okay, so we've talked about the crop tops and stuff like that. So what is one of the biggest conflicts that you guys still have to this day?
Makeup, for sure.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so during the pandemic, when the pandemic first hit, I was really bored. Like we had a lot of time on our hands. Like we said, I didn't have a whole lot of I wasn't on social media or anything like that. So I was just really bored, and I did have a laptop that I would watch YouTube on, and I started like getting really heavy into makeup tutorials and stuff like that. And I was like, you know what, I really like I tried to talk to him and stuff like that, and he finally let me like actually go and buy some makeup. Me and my mom went, and we just got myself, you know what I'm saying, little something to get started. And so I think he thought he was okay with it when he said yes. But as I started to get better and to like actually wear makeup, because I would just like practice in the house and wipe it off or something like that. Also, it was the pandemic, so I wasn't going anywhere. But I think as time went on and I got a lot better with my makeup, and I actually started doing my makeup for specific things. Like if we were going out, or it was like, oh, you know, we're going to go to the mall today, it started being like, oh, we're waiting on Samara because she's doing her makeup. So then it would be like conflict because, well, why are you doing your makeup? And I'm like, because I have it and I like to do my makeup. So then it would be an argument about whether you need makeup or not. And then me trying to explain, I know I don't need makeup, but I want to wear it. And my dad's like, well, why do you want to wear it? Like, you know what I'm saying? So it would just come up repeatedly. I don't really think it comes up as much anymore. But the one thing that I did have to explain to my dad was that women in general just sometimes like to do things to make us feel pretty. They don't necessarily have a meaning or a value that, you know, that it's necessary. We just do it because we want to. You know what I'm saying? No one needs to take a 45 shower, but you take it because you know what I'm saying? Or like no one needs eat a $45 steak, but you eat steak because you like it. So like it was just really trying to explain to him, like, hey, you like your things, you like to cycle, you like to watch, you know what I'm saying, your movies and stuff like that. You like comfort, like these are all of these things that you're interested in. Me as a girl, I'm going to be interested in other girly things. One of those things just happens to be makeup. So I had to explain to him that, like, you know, part of my little ritual of, like, you know, feeling like a girl is to sit down and do my makeup. I know I don't need it. And I had to, like, I think that's something that every woman has to discover for themselves, your relationship with outward things and outward beauty, and whether you're going to connect what's on the outside with what's on the inside, or, you know, find that right balance. So I think I've always been good with finding the balance. I've never done super crazy makeup, never just worn makeup 24/7 just because I didn't want to be seen without it. It was never like that, but he just really, he couldn't understand. It was like I was speaking another language. He couldn't understand it. So there would be days where I'd be like, hey, Dad, like, do you think I look pretty? Because I always check for his approval. There are some times now to where, like, I can live without it. Like when I got my nose pierced, I knew he didn't want me to do it, but I mean, I didn't care. I just got it pierced. But I still in some ways like do look for like his approval. Like when I would first start like wearing makeup, like I would like ask him and he'd be like, why you got on so much, or da 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 da, like why are you wearing it, like you don't need it. So I had to kind of like explain to him, like, you know, I know that I don't need to tell me I don't need the makeup. I know I don't need the makeup. Just like, you know what I'm saying, be a little gentler. And then he did, and he started buying my makeup for me sometimes. So yeah, and now it's much not even really a conversation. Like he understands, and I don't even really wear it that much. So it's a good.
So Sandy, sometimes as parents we project our fears on our kids, right?
Yes.
What was the fear behind your daughter wearing makeup? What was your fear?
I didn't want. It's almost like I'm thinking that she's putting it on because she's insecure, right? And me being a little bit more mature, you know, I tried to convince both my daughters that they are beautiful natural. You know,
which I was insecure.
Yeah, but you know, I'm a dad. I'm like, damn, y'all don't listen to nothing I say. That's what. That's kind of like my response. Y'all don't listen to nothing I tell you. So you don't believe me, right? You believe the world. Don't believe me, right? So you trust, you know, more you trust what I'm saying, you know, and that's kind of how I took it, you know. So it's, you know, and as far as the project, you know, we do have a tendency to do that as parents. My mother had a saying when I would ask, why can't we go to the movies? You don't need to go to the movies. Why can't I go to the dance? You don't need to go. That was the answer for everything. If I asked my father why, he said the car tire. Because, you know, those are the reasons I got, you know. So I never wanted to project. My wife will tell you, I tried very hard not to project my fears onto my children. I wanted them to grow. I wanted them to know how to drive and take care of themselves. I did not want it as much as my mother and the women on my mother's side of the family. My maternal grandmother did too much for the men in the family. I did not want no parts of that. So, but
yeah. So let me ask you something. So I heard Samara saying that she always looked for your approval. Maybe now she doesn't always look for your approval. So how does it make you feel as a dad that here is your daughter who adores you and is looking for your approval, and you're asking her why, instead of just telling her, yes, you look pretty, you're questioning her and asking her why she's wearing this, she shouldn't wear this. How does that make you feel?
it makes me kind of proud. You know, I mean, it feels good to know that she wants my approval. You know, well, like I tell my wife, I said she still won't listen, but it's she's gonna do. But you know, a part of that, you know, the honest to God truth is part of that was when she was going through her transition and going through her hard period. I had to allow her to express herself all the way. So I had to let her experiment. You know, I had to let her develop. She was a young lady. You know, I just always reaffirmed her and made sure that you know you don't need that, but go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, and it kind of it gives me a job of making sure I stay on the straight and narrow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My approval, you know, and I'm glad of that. You know what I'm saying? Because that means that something got through there. Where, okay, maybe she does value my opinion more than she cares about the world.
Okay, that's a
Yeah.
good thing to know, right? Um, so Samara, let's talk about the conversations you had, the tough conversations you had to have with your dad, right? And your mom. So last time we talked mostly about your conversations with your mom, right? What hard conversations have you had with your dad, and how how what changes have you seen then and now, right? Like what changes have you seen in your dad that are maybe like a sign of growth for you, for him rather, in your opinion?
I think actually it was a little bit more of a moment of growth for me, but there's like been an ongoing like kind of conversation. I'm sure he probably still feels this way a little bit, but we have talked about it. But like we talked about, you know, with the pandemic and stuff like that, it was my mom that I was home with the most. Daddy was still working. And sometimes he was working straight through because with COVID, his coworkers would either get called out or couldn't come in. So all the shifts would be delegated to my dad. So he was working quite a lot, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. So it was mostly my mom that, you know what I'm saying, I really got really back close with during that period. So it started to come up, I want to say maybe like 2 years ago or maybe 2.5 years ago, that my dad felt like I wanted to talk to my mom more than I wanted to talk to him. And so we had to have like a lot of conversations for me to both sometimes explain to him, like, if I'm talking like this or I'm bringing this to you a certain way, like this is what I need. You know what I'm saying? I need a certain reaction. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think the biggest thing that my dad had to learn was like understanding what it means when I'm venting and how venting is different than actually, you know what I'm saying? Like I can be venting and be like, oh my God, I'm going to kill them. I'm going to da 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 da. And like, he would be like, no, Samara, you can't. But I would have to explain to him, like, I know that this isn't the healthy way to process it. But for right now, I just need to talk. So that was like a conversation that we had. And I thought good with like doing that sometimes because now he kind of knows. Same with my mom. I had to have the same conversation with my mom. So like that was a conversation that we had that I think has like kind of allowed for me and him to like talk a little bit more. I do talk to my dad more now. I do still talk to my mom like a little bit more, but it's just because she's always here with me, like 24/7. So whatever like random thought pattern I'm having or something like that, her office like literally 10 feet from my room. So it's not hard to reach her. It just so happens that when my dad gets home, he's usually really tired. And we're usually just trying to make sure he gets dinner so he can rest. So there's a few days out of the week where I have my dad here and he be going places and running everywhere and yeah. And so and then Fridays are delegated to my boyfriend. So I don't see dad like a whole lot. I don't see him like a whole lot. 2 full days out of the week, but I try to where we can, you know, a little.
Does it feel you good? Does it make you feel good to know that your dad was a little concerned about you talking more to your mom? Because that means that he wants to talk more to you.
Always, I say that my dad is sensitive. He says that he's not sensitive. He says he's not sensitive, but the truth is like he's a big teddy bear. He's sensitive. He's got a tender heart. So I mean, like when I would go away for like the weekend, because I used to like spend weekends with my siblings during the pandemic, stuff like that, just so I could get out of the house. If I didn't call him, like he would be like, so you're not gonna call me? You didn't want to talk to me? Like, so I mean, but like I said, that kind of brings some humanity to our relationship, like, you know, that we actually like each other outside of like just playing the roles of like parents and child. So I like it.
So let me ask you something. You say that there's a running joke in your family that is it Thursday or Friday, you guys have to have an argument or a passionate discussion. So let's talk about your passionate discussions. How do they shape your relationship? And also, can you give us an example of some of the things that you've talked about so many times, but you've agreed to disagree on?
Yes. So one of the biggest thing is like the gaps or like the differences between our generations. That's like one of the biggest ones because my dad, what are you, X, Generation X? X? Yes.
Yeah.
So like, you know what I'm saying? My dad explained earlier, like, his taught a certain thing and stuff like that. And Gen Z, among some other maybe more controversial, just all around, we're a lot more individualistic, maybe a little bit more stubborn, you know what I'm saying? A lot more connected to, worldly ideas and things like that because of social media. And just a lot more fluid, I guess, about a lot of things. One of the things that my dad hates is like my boyfriend will call me bro, and like he will complain and rant about how my generation has made it okay to talk to, each other. Yeah.
From the 60s and 70s, girls or guys?
Yes, he says that, you know what I'm saying?
Girls.
You're supposed to talk to women like they're women and guys like they're guys. And like I try to explain, like, Dad, it's not that big of a deal. And then I try to explain, like, you're not going to blame it on my generation. Like, there was a whole other generation before us that, So I think there was one time, like, I think we actually really did get mad at each other that day. I think we really were mad because he was blaming me. Like, I did it. He was blaming me, like, but when he's passionate and he's there, he goes here. And then if he goes there, I'm going to go here. And then he's going to go here. So it just starts to, you know what I'm saying? So I think we actually did get mad at each other that day. But I will say, like, that dynamic, though, my dad is, like, the only person that I can argue with like that and then come back 2 minutes later and not care. I do think that because we argued and because we disagree so much, it's made us that sounds terrible. That sounds awful. We don't disagree on everything, but because we disagree so much, we're good at doing it. I don't know if that makes sense. Like I think we both gotten better at just walking away and like letting the other person have it. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, we still, as much as we butt heads, I'm very mushy towards, like, my mom will say, like, I talk really high pitched when I'm talking to him. Like, I get really mushy with him. Like, it's just like, so we prefer to be like that than to like argue. But when it happens, like, it happens. And then we just like, and then sometimes it is serious. Like, there was one time, like, a few weeks ago, I think I interrupted him. He really got mad at me. He left. He didn't even say anything to me when he left. I was like, oh my God, he's actually upset.
2 months ago.
It wasn't 2 months ago.
Okay. Hang on.
We'll check afterwards to see if it was 2 months ago. But yeah, so like, and then I was gonna leave it because I felt like he was mad for no reason. But he's still my dad. So I texted him and I was like, hey, Daddy, look, I'm really sorry I upset you. And he responded back and we were fine. So because we conflict so much, we're really good at conflict resolution. And it's not hard for like either one of us to like dial it back at some point and then have like no hard feelings after. So I mean, I don't mind, but it really is every Friday, like clockwork. It's either Friday or Thursday.
Yep, it's Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay. So Sandy, let's talk about how Samara relates to you versus how you related to your dad and to your mom.
Oh, shoot. I think that Samara's is probably 10 times more than I was. Yeah. So in my generation and my father's generation, it was pretty much deal with it. What I say goes. It was still a lot of that, no means no. And there was no expression. My mother told me something one time. She said, if you concern yourself with how people feel about you, you're going to run yourself crazy. And that's probably the all she gave me to try to help me get through peer pressure and low self-esteem, things like that. So Tamara's 10 times more vocal and 10 times more expressive than I ever was. I pretty much just handled it, and I put it all into um, being. My grandfather has like 38 acres. I stayed outside, climbed trees, and I didn't know it then, but I was talking to God a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so and my father worked every day, and he showed me love through his expressions. And my mother, you know, the way she loved was just being overprotective. You know, I spent more time with my grandfather than I did my father. He was a silent teacher. Um, so I didn't bring a whole lot of concerns about girls and things like that. It was mainly just, can I do this and can I do that? No. And that was pretty much it for me.
Mm-hmm.
So Mara, I'm glad we got over that hump, and I'm glad that you're vocal and expressive, because as I said, you don't deal with stuff now, you'll be dealing with it when you're 25,
Mm-hmm.
35,
Mm-hmm.
55. So
How difficult was it though for you to change, like to change your to be like, okay, now it's difficult because you've grown up this one way. You had older children who are not as expressive as Samara. How difficult was it? Was it difficult? And what would you tell other people, other parents who are in your position?
me about my other kids, or
No, like how difficult was it for you to accept that kids also have a voice?
yeah, yeah. Wow. It was it took some humbling. It took some humility.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it did. And I oftentimes had to think about how I felt like it didn't matter what I said when I was younger. So it took some humility to be able to reform and come back, and listen. And the only teacher we had back then and stuff like that, it was like unheard of. And it's kind of a racial stereotype that, from back then, is that, oh, white people talk to their kids, black people whoop their kids. You know what I'm saying? you know, so the softness, you know what I'm saying? We didn't get a whole lot of that. And so, and there are many times when, I was getting one of those spankings and I'm like, but mom, can we talk about this? I saw it on a TV show. I figured I'd try that, So it took a lot of humbling, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's hard to break certain traditions, a lot of times. But if you still love and you still care, you know what I'm saying, then you can make the transformation. You can make
Mm-hmm.
the because you have to, wisdom would tell you what are they responding to and what are they not responding to, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
generation X, don't get me wrong, there are still some things in this world today that I agree with. A young man need to know how to change a tire, change a battery. You know what I'm saying? Put air in the tires, change oil. Uh, Everybody need to know how to cook, clean, fold clothes, wash dishes, all those things. I don't care how much money you make. You're gonna always need a plumber. You're gonna need a welder. You're gonna need a construction worker. You're gonna need a mechanic. You know, I'm just very old school, and I don't think that our society and our culture has did a good job of keeping those blue collar jobs like that and skills elevated to a point that brings us all together as one. It's
Mm-hmm.
too fast separation. And I think that if we can get grassroots, what I'm saying, all can communicate better
Mm-hmm.
and better. So likewise, that's where you can bridge the gap between the generations.
Mm-hmm.
So
So does Samara know how to put air in her tire?
Samara just had to like fill up a gas tank like a year ago. Um, don't know, like, I don't really know. Only because I struggle with, like, another argument that we have is the fact that I'm not good at directions. Anywhere I go, I have to have my GPS. And my dad, he hates, like, he'll be like, what do you mean you don't know how to get from down here to the mall? You've been going to the mall since you were 5 years old. If you wasn't asleep, then you would know. Like, you know what I'm saying? And I have to, like, explain to him, like, Dad, I just don't know directions the way that you do. I'm not directionally savvy. I don't remember road names. I don't remember highway numbers and interstate. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think he's always taught me to try to, like, always be able to take care of myself. That was something that, like, being able to be independent is something that both of my parents pushed from a very young age. I knew how to cook when I was very young. I knew how to do the laundry by the time I was 6 or 7. I was doing the dishes in elementary school. I had my chores second, third grade. Like, I was always taught that you should be able to take care of yourself. Maybe some of the more complex things like changing a tire, I'm not there yet, but my parents have always pushed that. So, like, just as much as there are things that we disagree on, there are things that we agree on. We've never disagreed about school being like prime and being like my first concern. That school always comes first. We've always agreed on that. He didn't like the fact that I wear makeup, and he probably still doesn't like the clothes that I wear. But compared to some of the things that other kids my age are doing, we still agree on, like, the principles of, like, don't do stupid stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, there are lots of things I don't do. As much as he probably would complain about me not listening, I listen a lot. I don't really go. I do my homework. The latest I'm home is 10 o'clock, maybe. You know what I'm saying? So I would say that a lot of the things that we do, like, foundationally, we do agree on. And I do that. Just because we disagree doesn't mean that I don't still listen, because I still live here. So, you know what I mean?
I'm just curious. Can you talk to your dad about your boyfriend? Do you talk to your dad about your boyfriend?
Yes.
Okay.
He's my second boyfriend that they've known about. My first boyfriend, literally met him, like, what? Do you remember Amir? My first boyfriend literally met, like, a couple months after I got my phone. And my mom actually came and dropped me off at the first date. We had the first date or whatever. And then that was my first boyfriend. So that was 2020 to, like, May of 2021. And then that ended. And then this is my second relationship. And I was talking to him for a while. And then I eventually, you know, let my parents know, like, you know, there's this guy I'm interested in. I want you to meet them. Because they also said I couldn't, like, date properly until they met him. Like, that was a criteria. So we weren't, like, doing a lot of stuff, really. We were really just talking and texting for a long time. And then in January, they officially met him. And they liked him. It went really well. It went better than I think me and, you know, him had expected. But it went really good. And I think because it's pretty open, like, they know I have a boyfriend, they know that we're together. Like I said, Fridays are specifically, they know that I'm not gonna be here. I'm gonna be with my boyfriend, or he's gonna come over or something like that. So they pretty much let us, you know, be wherever we want to be. Sometimes it's his house, sometimes it's his grandma, sometimes it's here. Yes. And also, like, they'll let us, like, go places together and stuff like that. So yeah, we'll talk about it. And I think that me being transparent, you know, to a certain degree, or a respectable degree, about our relationship, gives them some comfort and allows me to have some of, like, the freedom and space that I want. So it kind of, overall, we talk about him. We talk about our relationship, again, to a healthy degree. And yeah.
So Samara, we are almost, you know, we're supposed to end at 8:30. We have a few minutes, but what can you say you would have done different? Because sometimes we have this wall as kids, right? You assume. So, for example, you just said that it went, the meeting between your boyfriend and your parents went much better than you thought, right? So, meaning you already had told yourself a narrative about how your parents are going to react and all that stuff, right? Do you feel that kids tell themselves a lot of narratives that are pretty much maybe exaggerated about their parents'
Yes.
feelings or opinions about things?
Yes, that's why I think it's important to have a balance between understanding on both sides. While parents can be set in their ways, can be very stubborn, can be, pretty one-sided sometimes in their thinking, teenagers aren't full-grown people yet. Our brains aren't fully developed. We haven't gained certain knowledge or wisdom. We're pretty impulsive. We write the stories in our head based off of what's happening in the moment and not necessarily a whole history of things. So I'll use an example, like, we could be having a great week as a family, and then my dad says, oh no, you can't do that, and then all of a sudden, oh my God, he's the worst dad in the world. That's how teenagers are. So I think, it's a healthy degree of recognizing when there is an issue and when a teenager is just being a teenager. But I do think that, yes, my dad, as much as there were, both of my parents, as much as there were things that I didn't like about them, there was so much more to be grateful for. I've never had to look for a plate of food. I've never had to look for love, never had to look for clothes. I've had what I wanted in life and more because of them. Like I said, my dad is so sweet, so tender. He'll bring me whatever food I want, no matter how tired he is. He'll bring me my snacks, my favorite ice cream. Like, you know what I'm saying? So I think that if I was younger, something that I would do different is do better with being more honest to myself about the narratives that I'm telling myself. I may have felt unloved or felt like no one understood me, but there were people that were always trying, specifically my parents, and there were people that always did love me. Nothing changed.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like they did and now that they do, you know? So that was a really, really big part of it. Again, there were some things that were happening that were significant and did contribute, but some of it was my own, thinking. You spiral when you're a kid. You're unstable in a lot of ways, whereas I think that we all say that, like, I matured kind of fast and kind of independent just because of the fact that I was always around adults, but I was still, you can't rush certain things, you know what I'm saying? So I didn't know everything. I wasn't as, you know what I'm saying, logical as I was thinking. So there was definitely growth that had to happen on both sides. Like, you know what I'm saying? My parents give me and my boyfriend a lot of freedom and a lot of, grace to kind of have our own space. So my growth looks like, if I ask to do something and they say no, respect it, leave it be. Don't push it. Don't lie about it. Don't try to do it anyways. Just let it be, so then we can still, you know what I'm saying, have our relationship.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
Dad, what would you say to conclude our session? Because unfortunately we're running out of time. It was supposed to be 1.5 hours, of which 25 minutes we were trying to fix a glitch. But what would be the takeaway message that you would give to dads regarding their relationships with their children, daddy-daughter and daddy-son relationships?
I would be a good listener, be sensitive, and be humble. We don't know everything either, right? And we don't know exactly what they're going through. Always create a safe place where there's no judgment and no condemnation, as it says in the Bible, so that they can express themselves. So you can know exactly what they're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they can't, what are they gonna tell?
Mm-hmm.
That's key.
Mm-hmm.
And because we have our own way of doing things, we don't always create the environment.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and it's gonna be some stuff you don't want to hear. You know what I'm saying? But we're gonna have to pray to God and just not be surprised at anything we hear and deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
But them holding it in and not being able to come to you is not an option.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Samara, what does a safe space look like for you as a teenager?
I think a safe space is just somewhere where you can just exist. It's not, Daddy, not just to
What
argue
did he
with
say?
me. He said a safe space to me is where I can argue with him. He's so sweet. No, but I think that a safe space, it was about us not just creating environments where we could be super serious and have these super long and super grueling conversations. It was a space where we could just be a family and just love each other and just talk about small, insignificant things, you know, the things that life is really about. I would say that that's what a safe space is. I think that, again, it's about looking at your parent-child relationships as relationships first, and not necessarily just this shift in authority or this higher authority or another, because it's not that. That's part of it, but it's not only that. I think it does take a certain level of seeing your kids as your equals to be able to create those spaces. And equal doesn't mean same. It just means worth the same amount. You know what I'm saying? I think that was like the biggest key to like creating, you know, making our home actually feel like a home. Was our
So, okay, to conclude this, Dad, how would you describe your relationship with Samara today? And that's the one thing. And then, what would you like Samara to know?
The way I have to describe it, I have to go off of the fact that she has a boyfriend, not just a boyfriend. He has his family that's pretty much accepted her and pretty much adopted her. And I've had to come to the realization that she may not be here much longer. And I have to let her go.
Is that hard?
It's not as hard as I thought it would be. If all things are right, you know, I'll be turning her over to someone else. And the fact that I trust the young man, he has a healthy fear of me too. And his family, great principles, I'm okay with that. I'm okay. So I think that our relationship kind of matured and it's growing in another direction.
And I was going to ask you a question, but you answered it. Like, what you went through is what has brought you to the place where it's not as difficult as it would have been had you not grown and gone through what you went through.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. I had to grow with it and humble myself to grow.
Okay. Humility is important. So, what would you like Samara to know?
I hope that I mean, I just want to always know she can always talk to me still, no matter how old she gets. You know, I'm always here. I always love you. You know, but you know, if you ever when you get married or whatever, you know, just know I'm going to send you back to your husband. Okay.
Okay, and Samara, what would you like your dad to know?
So just because I don't do anything you tell me to do doesn't mean I don't love you.
I got you.
Yeah. Because I think he thinks I like to spite him sometimes, but I don't. It's really true that I don't. I don't do things just to upset him. I really don't. Yeah, that's really it.
Okay, so let me see if there's any comments. People are so quiet. People are just watching. Nothing. People are not saying anything. Okay, let me see. Okay, there's no comments, you know, but I would like to thank you so much, Sandy and Samara, for giving me your time, for giving us your time and teaching us valuable lessons about vulnerability, humility. Sandy, you spoke about humility a lot, that you had to humble yourself and father Samara differently than you were fathered. Oh, I see there's a comment. Let me see what someone is trying to say. Oh, the conversation was so captivating. That's what someone is saying. So I want to say thank you so much, Sandy. Thank you so much, Samara. And Oneka, I know you're in the background. I can see you're watching. Thank you so much, guys, for opening up your family, for teaching us valuable lessons. And I know that by hearing this, there's many people who are going to avoid the mistakes you made, and they're going to they're going to become better parents, you know, by learning from what you have told us. Liz said it's eye-opening. Thank you all. So just know, and Onika says, thank you for giving us a place to share. Just know that you are Kavaya's Daughter Speaks first family to come on. So you're going to always be special. And if we need anything, based on family dynamics, because now we see that Samara is, growing up and going to a different direction, we'll call on you. And we hope to hear from you soon. Thank you so much for sharing your lives, and God bless you.
Thank
Bless
you
you.
so
Thank you
much.
so
God bless
much.
you.
Now.
Okay, bye.
Bye.